Every decade has its own vibe, right? A kind of promise it makes to its people. But what happens when that promise doesn't just fade out, but shatters? Like all at once. That's what we're diving into today. That exact moment when the quiet, predictable world of one era just slammed into the chaotic reality of the next. So, it's really a tale of two completely different decades right next to each other. You've got the 1950s dream, all about security, making a good living, and yeah, fitting in. And then boom, you have the 1960s reality, challenge, chaos, and massive change. And let me tell you, understanding how one morphed into the other, that's not just some old history lesson. It's basically the story of how modern America was born. Okay, so to really get a grip on this huge shift, we've got to go back and look at the 1950s. On the surface, it was this picture-perfect, optimistic time. But as you'll see, that optimism, it came with a pretty hefty price tag. I mean, just try to imagine the sheer relief. You've just come through the Great Depression and then a massive world war. The 1950s must have felt like everyone could finally just breathe. The economy literally doubled. The GI Bill was a game changer. It sent a whole generation to college, helped them buy their first homes. You've got these brand new suburbs popping up everywhere, places like Levittown, promising the shiny new American dream. And who's in charge? President Eisenhower, this calm, steady, almost grandfatherly figure. It felt safe. But, and this is a huge but, that perfect picture? It had some serious cracks. That dream wasn't for everyone, not by a long shot. Think about it. Black veterans fought for freedom overseas only to come home to segregation. Women who'd been building the war machine, planes and tanks, were basically told, thanks, now go back to the kitchen. And under all that shiny new prosperity, there was this dark undercurrent of fear, the Cold War, the Red Scare, and the absolute paranoia of the McCarthy witch hunts. So all this pressure to not rock the boat created this ideal person for the era. They called him the organization man. The whole point wasn't to be a trailblazer. It was to fit in, be a good company man, be loyal, be predictable. Questioning things? Oof, that was risky. People might even call you un-American. It was like this unspoken deal the country made with itself. We give you a nice house and a steady job, and you just keep your head down and conform. But you know what? Even in this super conformist time, you could feel the ground starting to shake. Little tremors. You had the Supreme Court with Brown v. Board of Education saying segregation in schools is unconstitutional. You had Rosa Parks making her incredible stand in Montgomery. These were the first signs of the earthquake that was about to hit. And get this, even Eisenhower, Mr. Stability himself, he uses his last speech as president to warn everybody about something new and dangerous, what he called the military-industrial complex. So you've got this tension building up, right? And that just set the stage perfectly for a totally new kind of voice to break through. A voice that wasn't about comfort, it was about courage. It wasn't about staying calm, it was about renewal. And man, was it the right message at the right time for a country that was getting a little tired of its own squeaky clean image? And in 1960, that voice arrived. John F. Kennedy. The guy was only 43 years old. His youth, his energy, it felt like a brand new day. I mean, a total 180 from the quiet, stable Eisenhower years. At his first big speech as president, it absolutely nailed that new spirit. That famous line, it wasn't some warm, fuzzy promise. No way. It was a challenge thrown right at the American people. He was basically telling a generation that grew up with all this comfort, hey, it's time to look beyond your own backyard. It's time to commit to something bigger than just getting rich. He gave this whole vision a name, the New Frontier. And it wasn't just talk. He put it into action, creating the Peace Corps to send young people all over the world, pushing hard for civil rights right here at home. And then there was the big one, that incredibly bold promise to put a man on the moon. All of it was designed to do one thing, push the nation to be better, to be bigger, to do more. So you can see this fundamental shift happening. It's like the entire country's focus was changing. The 1950s were all about that search for personal security. Now, the 1960s were becoming about a call to public service. Chasing your own comfort was being replaced by taking on these huge national challenges together. And for a little while, it really felt like it was working. It was this brief, shining moment where the American promise seemed like it might actually be for everyone. The media even had a nickname for it, Camelot. But that incredible optimism, well, it was more fragile than anyone knew. And it was all about to come crashing down in one afternoon. I mean, think about it. Kennedy had just stared down the Soviet Union in the Cuban Missile Crisis, pulling the world back from the brink of nuclear war. The momentum felt unstoppable. And then, November 22nd, 1963, a motorcade rolling through Dallas, and then the shots. In one single horrifying moment, the story of the entire country changed forever. Look, this was so much more than just the death of one man, even the president. It was really the death of a certain kind of American innocence, that quiet, baked-in belief that things always get better, that progress is just guaranteed. The idea that America was somehow special, protected from the really awful stuff that happens in the world. That illusion, it died right there in Dallas. And the years that came after, wow, they were just filled with chaos. The Vietnam War, riots in the cities, more assassinations. But here's the fascinating thing. From the ashes of that horrible day in Dallas, the dream wasn't just thrown away. No, it was reimagined. New movements took off, and they had this brand new, powerful urgency. Suddenly, the fight for civil rights just exploded with this new fire. The anti-war movement started challenging the government in a way nobody had seen before. The women's rights movement took on centuries of inequality head-on. Now, these ideas weren't brand new, of course, but the difference was this raw, urgent feeling that the system itself was broken. Change wasn't something you could politely ask for anymore. It was something you had to demand. So when you really step back and look at the whole picture, the crazy 1960s weren't just a complete rejection of the 1950s, it was more like an evolution, a really chaotic one, for sure. Think of it like this. The 50s built this amazing foundation of wealth and prosperity. Then the 60s came along, stood right on top of it, and asked a really tough question. Okay, great, we have all this prosperity, but what's it for? And who actually gets to be a part of it? At the end of the day, Kennedy's death did more than just end a presidency. It completely shattered the country's simple, happy-go-lucky faith in its own story. And it left behind a question that wasn't just for the 60s to figure out, but one that, honestly, we're all still wrestling with today.